early milestones or maybe less of the regulatory successes or something along those lines that you'd imagine an inflection point to be. But a lot of it is just proof of concept. Does the device work in a model? Also thinking through what it would look like in a surgical suite or a cath lab. Those are the things that you're trying to answer early on. At the stage we were at, when we answered them, it was very impactful, and you can really show the vision to your future investor.
Welcome, MedTech Gurus. We're thrilled today to welcome an exceptional innovator to the show, Dr. Robert Chisena, co-founder and chief technology officer of Amplitude Vascular Systems. Robert holds a PhD in mechanical engineering from the University of Michigan and a BS from Penn State. His research and product development expertise spans cardiovascular mechanics, diseased tissue modeling, and medical device manufacturing. He's authored over 14 publications and is the named inventor on 5 patents. At AVS, Robert and his team are leading the charge to revolutionize the treatment of severely calcified arterial disease, an area with limited innovation and high clinical need. His journey from academia to entrepreneurial CTO provides a very unique lens on building IP-rich medtech platforms, managing R&D complexity, and scaling access through clinical partnerships. Hey, Robert, are you ready to be our guru?
Ready for you.
Oh, awesome. We're very excited to have you. So tell us something fun or interesting about yourself or your family so we can get to know you a little better.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I grew up on Long Island, so I'm a water junkie, so I love to be out on Long Island Sound somewhere, usually riding a windsurf board. I've gotten into a few troublesome moments, but made it out alive.
Yeah, I love that. As we were talking in the initial discussion before we started recording, I live right near Lake Michigan, and people are often surprised when I tell them that we can get 12 to 14 foot surf here, in certain conditions, and we see folks out there surfing and doing other fun stuff. So
I was always skeptical of the lakes coming from the ocean side, but the first time I saw them when I was in Michigan, I was blown away.
Yeah.
Great area, and I enjoyed the fact that you come out of the water and you're not all salty.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We can sell you a few T-shirts that say that around here. Right. So Robert, AVS is tackling really one of the toughest challenges in endovascular care, that being severe arterial calcification. So maybe you can walk us through what inspired you through the founding of the company and how your technology works.
Sure. Just to give you a little bit of background on the disease state, oftentimes people get these blockages in their arteries, either arteries that feed their appendages, so their legs, arms, heart, so the coronary arteries, and then their brain, the carotid arteries. And over time, those blockages not only prevent blood flow, but they become hardened. So you get this calcium deposition inside of those. Inside of the blockages. And so when physicians go and try to open them up mechanically, it's difficult because you have almost a bone-like material in that blockage. And so oftentimes that leads to incomplete expansion and other damaging effects that end up leading to longer-term issues or even acute issues in certain cases. So that's the disease state, very difficult to treat. Folks have been doing various techniques for a while, trying to figure out how to grind down or expand that calcium. Only in the past, maybe 10, 15 years, have there been this new technology called intravascular lithotripsy, where pulsatile waves, mechanical waves, are used to break up and shatter the calcium, fracture the calcium, and then by fracturing the calcium, that calcium sort of stays embedded in the wall, but it's now compliant with the rest of the healthy, flexible tissue. And so my co-founder, Hitinder Gurm, out of the University of Michigan, practiced interventional cardiology every day, and this was sort of something that he always had difficulty treating, intravascular calcium. And so his concept was, what happens if I take a balloon, something that I know how to use. Every interventionalist knows how to use an angioplasty balloon. If I take that balloon, I create these impact waves inside of it to deliver basically hydraulic shocks to the surrounding calcium and break up that calcium right at the spot localized. And so I spent about 2-3 years developing the technology at the University of Michigan, and realized that it was not only going to be effective in fracturing calcium, it was going to be safe at treating that tissue. And so from there, we realized there's a big market opportunity. A lot of people had the disease, so we felt that we would be able to positively impact the patient population. So at that point, it was just go execute.
Yeah, yeah. I love that, and thank you for the background. And if I've got my research right, some of the traditional methods had been like an atherectomy or angioplasty, right? That you kind of touched on, or maybe even like a bypass back in the day, right? To do around some of the affected areas. So, what are some of the key benefits that your system provides and delivers? Can you help us out with that?
Yeah. So a few things. So you mentioned atherectomy and angioplasty. So atherectomy is a tool that's used. It's a grinding burr, football-shaped grinding burr with diamond coating on it, and basically you go into the artery and you spin it at 50,000 RPMs, and it shaves away the calcium. It's still used often in cases where the calcium is very thick and difficult to treat, but it is relatively complex and requires some pretty advanced surgical suites. And so on the angioplasty side, it's a balloon that expands to a relatively high pressure and tries to kind of push the blockage out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes there's not enough power behind that balloon, and so you don't get the effect that you desire. However, the angioplasty balloon is very common. Every physician, every interventionalist knows how to use an angioplasty balloon. And so how do you basically take something that's very common and well known and apply enough energy to it such that you get a good outcome every time? And so the fusion of those two things is really what led Shockwave and AVS and others to kind of create these new technologies that could provide the ease of use that angioplasty does and the effectiveness that effectiveness and modification that atherectomy does in a very easy to use platform. And so that's where the space is going. So every time you use an AVS device, you're going to expect to get a great result and a safe result, and without all the complication that atherectomy brings.
Yeah. So, are you finding does it localize it a little more specifically than just maybe a broader based lithotripsy?
Maybe you can clarify your question so I answer it correctly. But are you talking lithotripsy as used in the urological space?
Yeah, when I think of lithotripsy, I think a little broader spectrum, right? And it sounds like, if I've got this right, you're kind of combining that with the localization of like the balloon. Am I on the right track with that?
Right. So there's multiple methods of urological lithotripsy, right? There's extracorporeal and intracorporeal. Extracorporeal, you have this big drum that basically sends a sound wave through your tissue from outside the body in. And then there's intracorporeal lithotripsy. There's various types. There's electrohydraulic, where you take two pieces of metal, you send a spark across it, and it creates this acoustical shock wave. There's mechanical based, which uses sort of an impact wave, which is maybe more akin to what we do. And then there's laser based, and it actually is kind of spread into the same three categories in intravascular care, right? So you have these electrohydraulic, which is shockwave, more mechanical impact, which is AVS, and then you have more of a laser-based technology, which is what Boston Scientific just acquired with Bolt. And so it's very much localized to a small area of your balloon, and that impact energy, or that pulsatile lithotripsy gets delivered just to the zone that you want to be treating.
Yeah, fantastic. That's kind of what I was thinking it would do, but thank you for that clarification. And then just backing up in your story a little bit, you've worked at the intersection of academic research and device development for most of your career. So we've got a lot of gurus out there that are entrepreneurs or soon to be entrepreneurs. So what were some of the lessons or best practices from that experience that help you build and lead a startup like AVS? Can you provide us any insights there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the first thing is you need to start with a problem that's not just a research solution. It's a problem that is being faced currently in healthcare, right? And so oftentimes you'll hear of taking a technology and applying it to a problem. We kind of did things in reverse. We took a problem and applied a technology to it. I think that is number one. What I would recommend to anybody starting this anew is going straight to the source and to the problem. I think what I learned over the course of the few years I was at Michigan was getting into a lab, whether it's a cath lab or an endovascular suite or any other surgical center, and figuring out what the true problems are. And then from there, you can go and solve one of those problems if it's meaningful.
Yeah, I like that. It's the meaningful solutions, right? In my career,
Right.
I've seen a number of what I call elegant solutions to non-problems, right? And that's what
Right.
we're trying to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be able to do research and learn new things, but if you want to translate that research, I think the number one place you should start is the ground zero of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And through your process too, right? You've been very involved with innovation. So, when you're looking to build a company like you are,
Mhm.
what do you believe are some of the building blocks of innovation and developing an innovative culture inside a medtech company? Do you have any thoughts for us there?
Yeah, I mean, so there's various stages of the company, right? So first is your very much research stage, right? You're making sure the technology is functional. I think at that stage, you're building like the very, very, very base of the foundation. In fact, maybe you're digging the hole for the foundation. So in that case, you really want the end user very close to you and somebody that is very forward thinking, maybe can think outside of their normal daily practice. And then, of course, on the support side, monetary support, investment support, you want to make sure that somebody is behind you that has access to a large number of these physicians or end users. So that's kind of where we started. And then, you move into the maybe more growth phase or tech dev phase, just prior to growth. And at that point, you're bringing in like-minded individuals that can think about how to bring all of the components of a product together, much like a recipe. And you want all of those people to be able to see the vision and then execute on that vision. At the same time, you're trying to create a culture that you're sort of leaving your ego at the door, right? We know you're incredible at what you do, but this is a very new application, new vision for you, and we're all kind of rowing the same boat. So figure out how to pull in the right direction. And I think once you can set that up, once you get excitement, get people excited about the technology and the prospects of it, I think the rest kind of falls into place, and everybody, sort of loves where they work, and then they want to get up in the morning and come make an impact at work.
Yeah, I like that, especially, checking the ego at the door. Do you find that a challenge sometimes with, really getting that done and encourage the right kind of debate and kicking around an idea? Or do you find that people just kind of buy into the idea and, that goes away after time?
Yeah, I mean, I think, leaving your ego at the door and pushing back on maybe set visions or set courses are two different things, right? So you can leave your ego at the door and have a disagreement. In fact, I encourage it often because if one person has an idea and it's not checked, or it's not what if scenarios aren't considered, I think you may miss something. And it's very much maybe not a democratic process, but very much an all hands on board thought process.
Yeah, I love that. That's helpful. So, as I mentioned at the top of the interview here, if I've got this right, you've got 5 patents, right, with your platform. So, IP is clearly a core part of your strategy with you and your team. So, maybe you can help our gurus out there in terms of why is IP so vital to medtech companies, especially at the early stage. Can you provide us some insights there?
Yeah, well, so medtech is notorious for large lawsuits, and you have these 800-pound gorillas in the room that are just have all sorts of different resources than you do, or more resources than you do, and so the only way you can protect yourself is through intellectual property. So that first and foremost, as a small company, you just you just need it. That's the only way you could potentially survive when there's such larger companies, and you have obviously a regulatory environment that slows things down. Or another way of thinking about how to get past the 800-pound gorilla is just move as quick as you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the regulatory environment slows you down. So there's a little bit of a balance there, right? So you have the regulatory process that's preventing you from moving fast, where you would be able to outpace the big company. But you sort of need that IP to be able to protect your asset while you're waiting through the regulatory path. I mean, for AVS, IP started very much from the beginning. University of Michigan is great in terms of ensuring you get the right resources to maybe do a lot of due diligence, in other words, on your first out patent, because that first filing is so critical to the foundation of your technology. So really, they made me study it quite a bit. I think I read probably 50 to 100 patents just in this general area when writing that first seminal patent. So by doing that, you sort of get a lay of the land, and you see who's been filing in what areas, and the potential for both patentability of that first patent, and then eventually what does the future landscape look like in terms of freedom to operate.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm just kind of curious, I might put you on the spot, but as you go through all of those patents and that kind of research, did that help you iterate and maybe find other avenues to take that core technology?
Absolutely. I mean, learning about what others have done in the past is always a great way of innovating and coming up with new iterations and new combinations. But I think more so it kind of sets the strategic tone of your intellectual property, right? And just make sure that you're covering your bases, and ensures that you have a good footing for future filings.
Yeah, fantastic. And with that iteration, we know that medical device development is just just constantly iterating. You've got to validate, and then you've got all the risks, right, to get that launched. So I'm wondering if you could just share with us at a high level what some of the bigger challenges that you faced with AVS and bringing your technology to life.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the first big one was off of the first early investment and basically small capital amount in the company, getting from university spin out to first in human. I think that was probably the biggest challenge. It was 3 employees, CEO, myself, and the clinical person. And getting through that was challenging with a small amount of capital. I think the second challenge is building the foundation required for operating at a high level in terms of the FDA, right? So, you obviously need a great quality platform. You need great operations, and those two, and then of course R&D. All 3 of those need to be working in sync in conjunction. Getting that ramped up is a challenge. So that's a heavy lift, heavy burden. But to operate in the U.S. At the level that the FDA expects you to is important. So otherwise, you're not gonna be a successful medtech company.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, I'm just kind of curious, coming out of a major university like University of Michigan, but just to genericize it, do you see any advantages when the technology comes from a well-known name brand university in terms of raising money, or is that a disadvantage?
In this case, it was an advantage. University of Michigan has some really great resources that allow you to kind of grow the technology from kind of very early stage to work out a lot of the early kinks, right? And part of that is University of Michigan has various funding mechanisms that provide early non-dilutive capital to translatable ideas. So the first one that we applied to was the Coulter Foundation. They actually rejected us, but it was probably the most impactful time in the journey of AVS, because we met our eventual early investor, Louis Cannon at BioStar. So he was probably the one of 9 that said, great idea. Let's give him the money. So he was very much a visionary. for this particular product. And so, fast forward, we got other funding that the university offered, worked out all of the kinks that the Coulter committee didn't like. And then 2 or 3 years later, we went back to Louis Cannon and BioStar, and he was super impressed with the progress we'd made, really saw the vision even more so than he did before. And it was still very early on, but he took a risk on us. And I think that's where the benefit of coming from these big universities is. They have all of these programs, all these resources for you. As somebody who'd never worked in a startup or a big company or any sort of med tech, being able to learn quickly at a university with those resources was extremely impactful to me, even.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I can see, you mentioned something interesting in there in terms of the university resources helping to plug maybe some gaps, right?
Yeah.
And I would think for an investor like that, just to see that, okay, maybe there are gaps, but now the team is working to close these.
Right.
From their standpoint, has to feel like you're maybe not eliminated risk, but de-risking it. Am I heading down the right path with that?
That's absolutely right. Every milestone you can hit, there's early milestones are maybe less of the major less of the regulatory successes or something along those lines that you'd imagine an inflection point to be. But a lot of it is just proof of concept. Does the device work in a model? And also thinking through what it would look like in a surgical suite or a cath lab. I think those are the things that you're trying to answer early on. At the stage we were at, and when we answered them, it was very impactful, and you can really show the vision to your future investor.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you mentioned early on about how important it is to get clinical input, right? And, AVS was, as you mentioned, was kind of born right during COVID and coming out of that. And since COVID, many of our gurus have talked about how difficult it is to get in front of, clinical teams these days. So how did your team approach that with some of that early clinical adoption? And were there any specific strategies that help open doors?
Yeah, the idea came from University of Michigan, right? So the reason why I went to University of Michigan for graduate school is because the engineering school is a 5-minute bus ride from the medical center, and so very early on we had physician input. In fact, the idea came from a physician, and then from there you have that physician that it's sort of his or her baby. And that person should take that concept and idea and all of the work that the engineer, the counterpart, has done, and share that with other physicians. Sort of talk from a kind of a level playing field. I think that's the responsibility of a co-founder. That's a physician, is to ensure that the concept is what other physicians would envision. At this point, we through the BioStar network, we have a lot of physicians that appreciate and understand our technology and are willing to provide feedback whenever necessary. So oftentimes we can do an email blast, or we have a number of physician advisors that we meet with regularly that will provide insight to future product lines. But even more so, there's nothing like getting into a cath lab and seeing your technology in action. And I think even as an engineer, that's important. I think I've probably been to about 50% of the cases that we've done so far in our pivotal trial. I was at all of the first in human ones. And every time you're in that cath lab, no matter how many times you've seen the product work, you always find something new. And oftentimes you're sweating because something's not going right. So the physicians are great, though. They get it. It's always an iterative process, and you're always working to improve so that you can make their lives a little easier, and then, of course, make the outcome a little better.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm smiling because I'm a veteran of a number of surgical product launches, and I can remember just saying a little tiny prayer in the corner, going, "Oh, please, just work today," right? And it always does, right? But you're right. You always kind of learn that one little thing that helps you the next time, right?
Man, I'm glad I'm not alone.
Oh yeah, every entrepreneur out there has felt that.
the poor the poor lead that gets all sweaty because you're saying those prayers.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So with that, I know you're getting ready for commercialization here and perhaps have even started that process. So what are some of the hurdles that you've encountered and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, I think through commercialization, you have to be careful because you go from a relatively small cash burn to a relatively large cash burn, right? And you have to be absolutely certain you're ready to go and ready to launch. I think one of the key things that we've decided on, and maybe you've seen the LinkedIn news, but we just opened a new facility here in Waltham, Massachusetts. Great facility to allow us to scale, build both capital equipment and the disposables, and really does a few things for us. Number one, again, it allows us to commercialize internally and scale as appropriate. Allows you to sort of take on more of the story and rely less on things you can't control. Second, it allows us to iterate much more quickly on future product launches. And so we've got 3 or 4 product launches planned post this that are going to become becoming on the footsteps of our commercial launch here. And then third, it keeps R&D, operations, and regulatory really close together. And when they're close together, problems get solved much quicker. And so you have less of those, I hope this is going to work in the cath lab moments.
Yeah. Maybe fewer of those silent prayers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Robert, this seems like a really exciting time for you and your team at Amplitude Vascular Systems. What's next? What does the future hold for you and your team?
Yeah. So there's a lot to choose from here. So a shameless plug here in the Viva conference in early November at Las Vegas. We're going to be doing a late breaking clinical trial. So we're going to be sharing the trial results from our all U.S. peripheral pivotal IVL trial. So that's exciting. And all of your listeners should definitely come to that. We're going to be doing a few symposia at TCT and Viva. So that really is going to be the next major event for AVS is sharing those clinical trial results, and that, to me that's super exciting because I'm a research guy.
Yeah.
The second thing is kicking off our coronary pivotal trial, and that's in the works and it's coming soon. So we're very excited about that. We feel like we have a very differentiated product there. We feel that the ability to get to tight lesions in your coronary arteries is tantamount to a successful coronary case. And based on our differentiated mechanism of action, we feel like we can really target those tight, narrow lesions compared to some of the other competitors. So we can't wait to start that trial either. And then, of course, your commercial launch sometime next year.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It sounds like a very exciting time, and I'll look forward to watching what happens. So, Robert, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your time and insights and being our guru today. If somebody wants to learn a little bit more about AVS or about what you've got going on, how do we connect with you? Is there a website or on LinkedIn, social media? How do we learn more?
Yeah, sure. And thank you for having me, Tom. I appreciate that. This has been a great time. To learn more about AVS, you can go to avspulse.com, and you can go learn about our technology and the mechanism of action, how it works, and some of our first-in-human cases and preclinical work. It's been a long time getting here. It's been 8-9 years, but we're really excited about what this technology holds. We think it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Robert, once again, thank you so much for being our guru today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
For sure. Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to MedTech Gurus. I am Sylvester Harris, your MC. If you want to learn more about Tom and his consulting services, you can go to www.pctmedical.com or email Tom at tom@pctmedical.com. Now, I can be reached at Sylvester Harris, that's SylvesterHarris 5048 @gmail.com. and I'd be pleased to discuss any voiceover work that you may want for your company or broadcast. Hey, thanks so much for listening, and catch us on the next episode of MedTech Gurus.